AJ Styles' arrival in WWE marked the start of a run nobody envisioned to be what it was. AJ came into it with all the hunger in the world and an eagerness to prove why he's the best wrestler in the world on the greatest stage, WWE. It was always going to be tough to achieve a lot, especially because WWE discards your previous accomplishments, but it took him only 3 months to win over everyone and get a push that would see him compete with the best of the best. Roman Reigns, John Cena, and Dean Ambrose, 3 of the biggest wrestlers from 2016, and every time he had a match with them, AJ would push them to bring out the very best and in turn make himself look much better. Very rarely are people unanimously in agreement that said person is Wrestler of the Year, but with AJ Styles, that was different. He was far away the best wrestler in WWE and the best wrestler in the world. The Phenomenal One had a good title reign and even faced Shane McMahon at WrestleMania. Styles was respected and booked consistently throughout the year, becoming the US champion, but his big moment in the year was yet to come. Now, WWE really respected AJ Styles. He was a workhorse through and through, but an illness to Bray Wyatt really turned out to be another moment where he won them over. Styles was on the SmackDown tour in Chile. He was working some matches in South America when the call comes. He's needed for TLC. The Demon Finn Balor is his opponent. Styles went back to the US and to Minneapolis, by the way, long flight, and had a great match. Balor and Styles had a notable match that night that was one of the best of the night, and that ensured Styles was going to be the marquee name of SmackDown. He got a huge title shot on the November 7, 2017 episode of SmackDown, and this episode was in London, and the champion was Jinder Mahal. He held the title for about 6 months up to this point and was expected to go into Survivor Series as champion. The WWE Championship hadn't changed hands outside the US in many years, and I believe the last time was John Cena in 2006, and outside North America was about 54 years. The match saw Jinder overwhelm the challenger with his power and slow pace. It worked very well and worked into his favor to slow down the match and in turn prevent AJ from actually doing something. But in a flash, AJ always made it possible. He brought out the best in Mahal, who was portrayed as a powerhouse, but at the same time sold well for Styles and made his offense look dangerous. The 450 led to the Singh brothers interfering, so they were ejected by AJ Styles. Danger was looming as Jinder hit the khalas and AJ's foot was on the rope though. I think everyone was convinced it would end there, but it only drove the crowd to further their support for AJ Styles. The champion wanted to hit a super khalas, but Styles escaped and hit the phenomenal forearm. 1, 2, 3. New champion. A huge surprise in the first WWE Championship win on SmackDown since Brock Lesnar's in the 60-minute Iron Man match in 2003. This also changed plans to Survivor Series and gave us for the first time ever a battle between AJ Styles and Brock Lesnar. So the rumor going around is that Jinder was supposed to face Brock, but he turned it down feeling like he wasn't a worthy opponent for him. It sounds believable because Brock almost had a lot of power back then. Remember how he threw the Universal title at Vince? He's like, hey asshole, he gets to do whatever he wants. This was a very good match though. I liked it because the idea of Styles winning the title didn't seem huge until near the end. It was building towards that moment and it didn't disappoint. You know, that's the thing about it. Like heading into it, you don't think AJ Styles is going to win the belt here, especially because it's a SmackDown in London. It doesn't seem plausible, but then it happened from out of nowhere. And I remember going on WWE.com the next day and seeing AJ Styles champion. I was like, damn, this actually happened? The following week, the fans were more proud of the win than Styles himself. Paul Heyman gave a strong reminder of what Brock is capable of on Raw, and Daniel Bryan, the SmackDown GM, made fun of him. He believed Styles was the man to bring him to the breaking point. The new champion wanted to use fatigue to his advantage, but also acknowledged he's the underdog. He was ready for a fight. Styles also had to worry about his next challenger, Jinder Mahal. He promised to take what's left of Styles after his match with Brock and win back the title. Okay, here we go. 2 great champions, AJ Styles and Brock Lesnar. Masters of Japanese wrestling and icons of the WWE. First time ever. Brock quickly went with what he knew. AJ was so overwhelmed with a flurry of attacks from Brock, who wasn't worried about the challenge in front of him. He was determined to wrap it up early. And like Booker T said, he didn't want water or bread, he wanted meat. Pause. It was almost embarrassing at some points because he was beating an almost defenseless man. The roads in Suplex City were filled with potholes and bumps. He was treating him like a rag doll and this fatigue came in though. This is where things were starting to change. It was starting to become a different story. Brock hit one of the best German suplexes ever here. This is one of the best German suplexes you'll ever see because of Styles' selling ability. The world-class ability of Styles forced this match to become more even. He was doing everything he could and even avoided the F5 to lock in the calf crusher. Brock was writhing in pain but then decided the party was over with a brutal slamming of Styles. He obliterated him, but even then Styles found a way to hit the phenomenal forearm. 1, 2, no. So he tried it again, but Brock caught him and with one leg managed to hit the F5. 1, 2, 3. Incredible match. Lesnar made Styles look like a huge threat and someone to worry about. He wasn't even smiling when he won because he was in pain, and looking at the challenge he had to deal with, AJ's performance was so good, he had Paul Heyman giving a promo about how he's one of the best around. It was one of the best matches in the entire year, and something I actually regret not watching at the time because, again, I wasn't watching a lot of WWE back then, like some random shows here and there, but even then I used to skip through them. And there was just not much to think about, you know? Like, I thought Styles winning the title was cool, but like, I just didn't care much about WWE because it was dry. Styles, though, had to look forward to Jinder Mahal. The former champion destroyed him before his handicap match with the Singh brothers. They jumped him for a couple of minutes, but it did nothing because they were jobbers. They accomplished nothing as Styles won the match to enrage Jinder. The build for the match was short and they were taking it slow with this one. AJ Styles was ready for his first title defense, and he said there's no reason to be champion if you're not defending it often. Styles praised Mahal for his aggression and ways to keep the title. It was more of a way for him to remind everyone what he's capable of. The Singh brothers got their asses beat the previous week and AJ wanted to hug them. He wanted to be in Styles' corner after Jinder beat them up again, and they ensured his match was going to be one-on-one and the champion was ready for a fight. And if you're like, why? Why is he ready for a fight? Because he knew Jinder was not far around. And that was true. Jinder didn't bother though. Very short build. They didn't even try to make Jinder look like a huge threat. It's like they wanted to get rid of him from the main event scene as soon as possible. It's one of the most obvious main events of the year, which is not saying much because it's a December pay-per-view. We all know those end. But let's talk about it. This one saw Jinder become more aggressive and urgent to win back the title. He worked on the ribs and was much smarter here. I like their SmackDown match more because it had a certain magic and allure when compared to this. This wasn't bad though. Styles made him tap out to retain the title with the Calf Crusher. So they established the Calf Crusher as a tough finisher again, and AJ was off to the next challenger. If you're like, why don't you have much to say about this? Because there wasn't much with the match. There just wasn't much. The better match was their SmackDown match. That's one thing for certain. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn had plenty of issues with Shane McMahon. Bryan was an ally of theirs despite the chaos they were causing, and he was somewhat favorable towards them, and that would show more so around this time period. Owens cheated to beat him in singles action. Zayn distracted him and Shane tried to make the save, but it led to the loss. This loss upset him greatly, but even then, AJ's goal is to hold the title to WrestleMania and retain the belt in the main event. Other than that, he wanted to beat Sami Zayn after last week. Yeah, he's gonna main event over Brock Lesnar. Shane apologized for his mistake last week, and this story was gonna tie into the whole KO and Shane one. Bryan was defending them harder than usual, and it led to Zayn winning the match and beating Styles. It went from bad to worse with Bryan giving them a title shot. AJ wanted a handicap match and he agreed, but made it a title match. Styles regret talking about a handicap match and mentioned the possibility of him losing the title, but he wasn't thinking much of it. The odds were with them and said that it wasn't fair. He didn't make a big deal out of it though and said that he could fight both of them separately. Renee Young was trying to get his insight into the whole Shane and Bryan drama, but he didn't bother to give an answer because that didn't concern him. Kevin Owens though saw it very differently, saying Styles knew that he wasn't capable of beating them because of the numbers. He even said they're going to be the first co-champions. Shane decided to rain on their parade and gave them a handicap match against Styles, Orton, and Nakamura. As expected, they lost. Shane was doing everything he could to make things tough for them, but even then there was plenty of confidence from KO and Sami. It was a foregone conclusion. Same can be said from Styles' perspective. He's going to do everything he could to keep the title because the possibility of them holding the title together makes him disgusted. They are annoying him with the yep thing, and I don't remember it being so over because at the time, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn thought they were like Dan and Bryan, they're going to do the yes movement thing, but they had this yep thing. I don't remember it being this popular. Like, I remember the yep thing, but I never remember it being as popular as it was here. The heels praised him but said he's predictable. They knew he was gonna come out here and act tough. He's also ignorant and stupid because he could have just shut up and the match wouldn't have happened. Then they mentioned his challenge of facing them in the same night and tried to get him to accept the challenge. A challenge that he himself made. Then Bryan came out and AJ questioned his decision, so instead of letting him book the match, Styles did it himself and accepted the challenge. He got through Owens easily with the Calf Crusher and he tapped out to prevent further damage and stayed around to get attention to his leg. Zayn had a huge advantage in attack before his match. This worked very well for him, not to mention Owens was on the outside. He wasn't doing anything but was definitely someone to look out for. Styles cost himself the match after being distracted and taking a Blue Thunder Bomb. Yeah, Zayn used all his Blue Thunder Bomb power on this match because he rarely wins matches with it. Like, I don't even remember, like, last time he won with a Blue Thunder Bomb, if I remember correctly, was like a year and a half ago. With that said, the handicap match was good. It was weird because of the stipulation though. That prevents it from being a better match, and it could have been much more if it was a triple threat match. Styles though managed to go through them and retain the title. He barely beat them and made good use of the element of surprise. And again, I must say, this match had potential. I think it would have been a great triple threat match, but they decided to use this to advance the Shane McMahon story. Later that night, Shinsuke Nakamura won the Royal Rumble and didn't waste time in making his choice. It was AJ Styles. A dream match for WWE, but their paths crossed a few years back. Styles was the leader of Bullet Club and amidst an incredible run that saw him become the undisputed best wrestler in the world. Nakamura was already widely known as one of the very best wrestlers in New Japan, and on Styles' way out, put on one of his best matches in his entire career for the IWGP Intercontinental Championship. 2 years later, they meet on wrestling's biggest stage, WrestleMania. Nakamura was very over at the time. He was loved by the fans, and it seemed like only a matter of time before he won a title. They had plenty of respect for each other and even teamed up later that week on SmackDown, but then Nakamura started the mind game saying he's gonna beat him at WrestleMania. At the same time, he still had to deal with either Zayn or Owens for Fastlane. They faced each other for a title shot and went all out. Sammy pressed AJ and got the match thrown out. He beat them up, and this led to Daniel Bryan coming out and booking a triple threat match for the title. The following week, Zayn and Owens attacked both Baron Corbin and Dolph Ziggler. This turned out to be a big mistake because Baron Corbin got himself a title shot by beating Kevin Owens. Dolph Ziggler followed up with a win against Sami Zayn, and it was now a fatal 5-way. AJ Styles felt that he was still in control of his destiny. He could make it to WrestleMania. Styles didn't consider it arrogance because he's always backed it up. But there was a problem. He could lose the title without actually losing the match because Dolph Ziggler could pin Kevin Owens. He could take them all. They're all beatable. Baron Corbin didn't want to hear him say he could be beaten because it was nonsense. The last time they faced off, he won the match, even beat him for the US Championship. The difference between them is that AJ is an athlete. He, Baron Corbin, he's a fighter. Kevin Owens came out and he quickly insulted them and called Corbin a scared cub after attacking him. Owens used this as an example of Shane having a vendetta against him, and he also said that he didn't need Sami Zayn and that he let him down after losing to Dolph Ziggler. Shane McMahon came out and booked the match between Corbin and Styles. Owens faced Dolph Ziggler. Sami Zayn made good on his mistake from the previous week and helped Owens score the win. As for Styles, he beat Corbin, but Owens and Zayn attacked after the match. They didn't stand tall though because Corbin dropped both of them. Just when Styles knew what he was dealing with, the champ came calling. He kicked off SmackDown the following week, and Cena was still trying to find his way to WrestleMania. He failed to win the Chamber and decided he wanted to be included in the Fastlane main event. He gets free main events, I guess. Then again, his name is John Cena. Cena was willing to earn a spot in the match. He ended up getting a match with AJ Styles. If he wins, he's in the match. Now, I completely forgot they had this one. I actually was watching WWE again around this time. I had come back for the Rumble after watching clips, and I could swear I watched this, but I don't remember it. I'm almost certain I did. Let's talk about it. Cena and Styles had a storied rivalry in 2016. Styles brought out the very best in John Cena and final form Cena in some of his best matches in his entire career. I think bell to bell, Royal Rumble 2017 might be Cena's greatest performance. The dynamics here are very different. Cena's already trying to go all out and felt like this was his last chance for WrestleMania. After the commercial break, Cena was in control. The face that runs the place brought AJ to a dangerous place. Cena's busting out a lot more here, and the style of the match was basically their matches in a short time. That's what it was. Workhorse Cena had a lot to offer. I remember it was so random seeing him do all these moves, but up to this point, it was normal business. They were going back and forth, and Cena was the one with the edge here. He was one step ahead of Styles for the most part, and I hate how there was commercials during this one, because this was a great match. Styles was making mistakes, but still managed to hit the phenomenal forearm. 1, 2, no. It wasn't enough to keep Cena down. 450 didn't work, so this opened way for the AA. He tried to follow up, but Styles pulled the rope to the outside. He knew Styles very well, and that one AA wasn't going to be enough. Instead, he AA'd him through the announce table. AJ Styles still beat the count, but he was on the verge of losing. He still locked in the calf crusher, but ended up being what cost him because Cena lifted him and hit the AA 1, 2, 3. Great match. It was back and forth stuff on steroids. There was no story for the most part, barring Cena's desperation to win, but who cares? It's a SmackDown match used to build the pay-per-view match, and it was great. All of the guys came out trying to make their mark, but it was Cena who stood tall. Now again, I really liked that match. It was a looser version of their previous ones, and something to show if you want to put the entire feud in one short match. Obviously, it's not their best stuff, but it was AJ's best match in this title reign up to this point. And that's saying something, because it blew away every one of his matches, non-title, title matches, whatever. John Cena will always be his most iconic opponent because when he crossed that road, he cemented himself as an even bigger legend of the industry and an icon of WWE as well. It was nice to see them run it back here again. Styles spoke about his title match ahead of Fastlane. He said that it's a grind to get to this point, and that grind doesn't stop. Fastlane was a great example of that, a 6-pack challenge. The odds were against him again, but he wasn't going to complain about it because he was going to fight. He made mention of the match against John Cena, a match that saw him lose clean. Styles showed a promo of Cena saying he'll give him a rematch at WrestleMania, but AJ clearly didn't want that. He didn't want to walk into WrestleMania as a challenger, not to mention that he wanted Shinsuke Nakamura. Fastlane was for the dream match. At the end of the day, Styles wanted that match more than anything. Dolph Ziggler interrupted and said AJ's not phenomenal anymore. He's desperate. Says the most desperate wrestler of the 2010s, Dolph Ziggler. When you hear that name, you hear desperation. And AJ said almost the same thing after I did. He told them not to listen to the fans because they'll turn on him. He did one of those yaps where he complains and says that AJ could forget about that dream match. They had a long match afterwards that was ruined by Zayn and Owens, and Shane turned into a fatal 5-way with the guys from the title match except for John Cena. Sammy won this match. He turned on his friend and showed that nothing was going to separate them from going after the WWE Championship. With that said, the 6-pack challenge at Fastlane was great. It was centered on 3 stories: Cena's road to WrestleMania, Owens and Zayn's hatred of Shane McMahon, and AJ Styles' determination to make the dream match happen. He had a lot of pressure on his shoulders because this was his last big challenge and his last hurdle before the show of shows. Cena was 99 overall early on, dropping everyone to AA. So they jumped in. Each man had their moment here, but the real notable ones were Kevin Owens and AJ Styles. It was really exciting. That Deep 6 was incredible, as was that toss, and KO realized he had a great chance to send AJ Styles to the announce table, but ended up being Cena who dropped him with an AA. This was when Zayn and KO really got comfortable and even had a battle against each other. Then Owens accidentally superkicked Shane McMahon and he had the title one with the pop-up powerbomb, but then Shane pulled the ref, leading to the haluva kick. Same thing with him. Shane didn't want to see him champion. They started going crazy with the finishers when AJ Styles came in from out of nowhere with a phenomenal forearm. 1, 2, 3. Wonderful match. It really set up the story as well for WrestleMania. There was great camera work showing AJ's triumph and Sammy and KO's heartbreak, and transitioned to Cena looking let down by the result of that match, and it was great stuff. This confirmed Shinsuke Nakamura's opponent being AJ Styles for the WWE Championship. I remember it being insane because not only was this match happening, but it was happening at WrestleMania, and it was for the most valuable title in WWE history. Insane stuff here, and the hype was off the charts with this one. Styles was hyped over winning the match and said that his reward at WrestleMania awaits. Everything about his WWE run is unbelievable, including the fact that he's walking into WrestleMania with the WWE Championship. In front of him was one of the Japanese greats, Shinsuke Nakamura. They share similarities, but the one big difference was the WWE Championship. Now at the time, Shinsuke Nakamura had a lot of momentum by his side. It sounds a bit unbelievable now because of how different he is, but back in 2017 and 18, there was a lot of interest and hype behind Nakamura to the point where it felt like a foregone conclusion before he'd win the title. Very charismatic and different to the rest of the roster. He told Styles his dream will come true. Rusev interrupted and led to a match. Nakamura watched on and even saved him from an attack. Shinsuke didn't need his help though the following week. There was still a worry from Styles that this match would get harmed, and he wanted Shinsuke at his very best and ensured it by being ringside for his match with Shelton Benjamin, because Chad Gable was around. After the match, the King of Strong Style called him in and said he didn't need his help. He once again said he'll beat him at WrestleMania. It was mind games and Styles didn't bother wasting time in playing. The champion said they're gonna put on a show at WrestleMania, but his dream match is gonna go a little different. That will prove he is the best because Nakamura is considered just that. And he responded saying AJ is gonna lose because he's too emotional. Gable and Benjamin attacked, and Shinsuke Nakamura used this as a way to play games. On the final SmackDown before WrestleMania, both men gave their final thoughts. AJ admitted that his emotions are always on display, but there is strength. He opted to focus on Shinsuke's weakness. The fact that he's the WWE champion. That's the weakness. Nakamura, on the other hand, said he was playing games, but it was all serious. AJ Styles wasn't someone to be taken lightly, and he knew what he was capable of, but was still using that emotion to his advantage. Their egos were on display for the tag team main event. Styles demonstrated what the phenomenal forearm was and brought out a lot of intensity from Shinsuke Nakamura. He did the same thing that Shinsuke did the previous week to him. So this is what it comes down to: the pinnacle of professional wrestling and 2 men that exude the greatness of the industry. Styles and Nakamura shouldn't be here, but their pure talent and timing is what it comes down to. Wrestle Kingdom initially seemed like the beginning. WrestleMania was going to be the apex and a match that shows both men in their final form. We didn't even consider the possibility of this being a disappointment. It's like Elon Musk trying to imagine himself broke. WWE didn't even put much effort in the build because they thought the match sold itself. You guys saw the build was. It's just like, I'm the better man, blah blah blah. They didn't even fight in the lead up to this match. They didn't have a brawl, none of that. Shinsuke had a grand entrance with Nita Strauss playing the guitar. It was wonderful and seemed like a foregone conclusion, a formality. Shinsuke used his mind games, but AJ was emotional. His aggression led to Nakamura taking control. The match was slow and had a certain pace to it. Shinsuke and AJ were wrestling like they were gonna have a 60-minute match. This needed to be a WWE 2016 match on steroids. You know, that's the thing that it should have been. It wasn't thrilling. When AJ hit the Styles Clash, that was the most exciting moment, and it ended there. AJ escaped the Kinshasa and hit the Styles Clash to retain the title. It needed more. Not more time, but more exciting moments, because if they did that for a few more minutes, it would have allowed for those back and forth and potentially a super finisher from AJ to retain the title. Instead, it was a match that left a lot to be desired. I didn't think it was bad then and still don't, but for what it was hyped as, not to mention the Wrestle Kingdom match, this was disappointing. Shinsuke embraced with AJ but then low blowed him to turn heel. Everyone was hyped for the heel turn at the time because it meant their feud would be taken to another level. He even dropped him with a Kinshasa. Nakamura had no remorse over his actions but said he got too emotional. When he was asked again, he decided to say he doesn't speak English. AJ Styles didn't feel like talking about him at the moment, opting to focus on Daniel Bryan. Bryan was back as a performer and Styles was excited to face him for the first time in WWE. Now this was better than WrestleMania. AJ and Bryan were masters of the ring, so it was almost a dream match to see them again. Very fast chain wrestling early on. Bryan's technical skills were on full display here along with his viciousness. Great TV match. They don't have a lot of time but they made the most out of it, with Bryan looking extremely motivated and AJ Styles wanting to bring out something as well. But then Shinsuke Nakamura interfered. He went after both men and laid out Styles with a low blow and Kinshasa. Then another low blow. It was bizarre. Styles was furious and he could have went after him last week, but decided on the dream match with Daniel Bryan. Nakamura though was still one step ahead, and just when his balls are healing, he's back. And then you have Big Cass as Bryan's first program. Stuff was random back then. Styles was still positive even though his balls were being targeted. He thought he was gonna soften him up, but again, he went for the low blow. It was a weird build because Nakamura touched Styles' junk more than he had words spoken in the entire build, and you'd think it should end with him winning the title with a low blow, but that's delusional. He had a new version of his theme song and I love it. I just love this version of his theme song. This match was shorter with both the guys quickly going at it and changing it up. The Saudi crowd wasn't that loud and the expectations weren't the same as previously, but one problem this match had was the fact that they were gonna face off again the following week at Backlash. Nakamura of course low blowed him during this one, but it wasn't gonna be enough to win it. Double count out finish. This feud was falling off quickly and I remember tuning out of WWE after WrestleMania. I did watch this show because I was intrigued by it because it was the first Saudi show that was live, not to mention in a stadium, and it was on a Friday, but I don't remember this match. They had another match for Backlash, but it was going to be no disqualification. Free low blows. Styles was irritated over Nakamura being interested in the wrong jewels. Not to mention, he was asking for an apology for Styles' attack after the match. AJ said low blows will be the least of his worries. Samoa Joe interrupted. He said that AJ isn't focused on the right match, which is the one with Roman and Joe. After that, he's gonna take that title. They were teasing what's to come and Shinsuke Nakamura took advantage of this. And another one. Bro, where's the protective cup at this point? Just tape one too while you're at it. Like, just keep it there. With that said, this one looked better initially, but it got slow. The match kicks up a notch and becomes a back and forth with a lot of intensity from Shinsuke Nakamura. Styles was getting vicious with the calf crusher and was starting to figure it out when he got low blowed. At this point, he wasn't immune to it, but he wasn't entirely weak from taking it. So he low blowed him himself. Then they low blowed each other and the match was thrown. That was the funny spot in the match, but both men couldn't recover. The fans were pissed. I don't get why they were ruining this feud with each match. Here, they could have had a result. The low blow thing was funny though, I'm not gonna lie and say it's not funny. It's just the result sucks. Styles didn't like the fact that he had to stoop that low like Shinsuke, but he had to. And after Nakamura said they weren't done, he agrees and was ready for another one anywhere. The worst part in all of this is the fact that one of their best matches was a singles match on SmackDown. Styles and Nakamura were going to face up with the winner choosing the stipulation for their match at Money in the Bank. I think it's because it's condensed, it brought out the best of what they were doing previously. Nakamura lied about the low blow and took advantage to hit the Kinshasa to win the match. They finally had a confrontation the following week. Nakamura had the match choice and Styles didn't want to waste time. He made it seem like this match was tough and grueling, and it was, because Nakamura revealed that it was a pillow fight, huh? Shinsuke stopped the jokes and said he wished to put knee to face. To AJ, it didn't matter because he beat him many times, not to mention this isn't the Shinsuke Nakamura he knew in the past. They had a brawl which saw Nakamura stand tall and reveal that it's gonna be a last man standing match. Yeah, another huge challenge for AJ Styles. The Phenomenal One didn't underestimate Nakamura but reminded everyone of what he's done up to this point. The match was confirmed but needed to be made official. AJ told him that every dirty trick up his sleeve isn't gonna work. He reacted in a way I don't even know how to explain. You can see it for yourself. I just know how to explain it. He was provoking Styles and again bringing out his emotions. Nakamura's games weren't played here because AJ slapped him. That was enough for him to sign the contract. Styles refused to apologize for his actions, and if anything, he apologized that he didn't punch him. This is SmackDown, not a playground. With that said, Money in the Bank was the finale. This rivalry wasn't really good and in some ways lacked a lot from the story and the matches. The story was of course about Nakamura becoming bitter over losing the match at WrestleMania, but it felt like he was the champion because the man was constantly smiling as if he's got everything figured out, when he's the one chasing. It's of course mind games, but they didn't have him show much after losing 3 title matches in a row. Why wasn't Nakamura more vicious? He showed it at times, but it could have been more. And I didn't care much at the time. I wasn't watching WWE a lot here. I knew everything that was going on, but when the pay-per-view comes, I didn't bother to watch. It's like, why would I watch WWE when it's boring? Other than the fact that they started off with a collar and elbow, it was good. This was the best both men looked, and it's because it was the finale. There was nothing after this one. So they went all out and brought out a great match which tested AJ's limits and storyline. He looked super resilient here, constantly getting back up. Nakamura was booked strong here, taking a Styles Clash off the steps, and of course an important callback to the low blow with AJ dishing out a low blow that would be equivalent to 5. And if you're like, why are you saying it's equivalent to 5? First of all, it looked rougher than any of the low blows that Shinsuke Nakamura sent him, and plus, he absorbed all the power of the low blows previously to destroy him here. And to top it all off, a super phenomenal form. Great match here. They missed the chance to give Nakamura the title a while ago, and by this point, it just wasn't going to happen. The match did go on for far too long, but it was good. It was a story that managed to establish that AJ Styles was better than Shinsuke Nakamura. It was a good match. I didn't like this feud much, which is disappointing considering the names involved. Their style here didn't work, which is sad because we saw Wrestle Kingdom. We know what they are capable of, but you're not going to get that match in WWE, not to mention Nakamura hasn't had a performance close to his debut in NXT. So it was off to the next challenger. Rusev Day was a very popular thing at the time. He actually connected with the crowd. Styles congratulated him on the win, but Rusev was upset at him punching Aiden English in the face. And by the way, this was because he won a #1 contenders match. He promised to break down the door to AJ Styles' house. Styles said he's good, but not some super athlete, and he took offense to this. Rusev once again said he's going to kick him out of the house he built, and he's moving in on Rusev Day. Aiden English failed to beat Styles, so Rusev came in. He beat him up and locked him in the Accolade. As you could see here, the build for this match was very short. It was more about Rusev being a transitional challenger for AJ Styles. This was the biggest match Rusev had during this Rusev Day gimmick, and remember, Rusev Day was a very big thing at the time. This was a very different match to Styles' title reign. Rusev was a powerhouse, so Styles decided to go after the leg. Rusev didn't work too hard to take control because he was a big man. He could throw Styles around, clubbing blows to the back for the Accolade. The champion was writhing in pain, and the match was a bit more even with Rusev himself having the problem of his leg. It was weird dynamics here because even though Rusev had the size advantage, it didn't show much here with him being in a lot of pain throughout this one. Aiden English got involved, leading to the Machka kick and a near fall. At the same time, he was in agony over the leg. He couldn't lock the Accolade and Styles was there. He had him, and once he locked it, it didn't have the same level of strength. Aiden English pulled the turnbuckle, but it ended up being a huge mistake. The 450 wasn't enough for the win. Styles took out English and hit the phenomenal forearm. 1, 2, 3. This was a good match, and I kind of hate that because to me, I enjoyed it more than any of the Nakamura and Styles matches except for the Last Man Standing one. Rusev fought hard, but he was up against an all-timer, not to mention had the leg targeted. Styles followed up with a match against Andrade on SmackDown, and it wasn't a big match, but it was solid stuff that also reminded me how exciting Andrade was in 2018. As for the next challenger, the SmackDown general manager, Paige, was going to reveal AJ Styles' next opponent for the WWE Championship. James Ellsworth came out, and it was funny because it was a flash into the past. This guy's chin couldn't pack a punch, and he was talking like he had a chance. But then again, he does have 2 hands, so you guys know the whole saying. After he got kicked out, Samoa Joe ran in and locked Styles in the coquina clutch. Joe was determined to make his mark and even signed the contract. Paige didn't like for him to do that, but that's the point. He's unpredictable. She chose him anyways, but he didn't bother to wait. It was about time this feud went down. These two have been connected throughout their careers in the 2000s and early 10s. It still hadn't happened in WWE though. Joe said he respected Styles but made mention of how he always preferred to be a wrestler rather than a husband to his wife. He said that Styles put the championship above everything, even if it meant that he was a failure as a father. Joe, with plenty of fury, said he'll take it all away. When he's losing, Styles' family will be cheering because once his house is torn down, they'll have their father back. Great promo here, but then again, that's expected. Samoa Joe really knows how to tell a story, and this promo is a great example of that. He used a different kind of mind games when compared to Shinsuke Nakamura. The champion said that he's doing all of this for his family, and it's not something to be proud of because it's what's expected of him. A champion might have to be away from his family, but there's always sacrifices to be made. Styles said that fathers are supposed to give their kids what they didn't have. Styles was upset because Joe knows everything about his family. He wasn't focused on just winning the match, now he wanted to make an example out of him, but Joe didn't really think much of it. A heated confrontation was looming ahead of SummerSlam. AJ admitted that Joe hit his pressure points, from the attack to the mentions of his family. He felt that he had to defend himself and he got emotional. Styles understood that he lost his cool and it showed when he went back to his family. Samoa Joe interrupted. He brought out a letter from a fan and it turned out to be his wife's. She sent this to Joe himself. Apparently, she wishes for him to lose the title because he lost her a long time ago. It would have been a missed opportunity for Samoa Joe to not use AJ Styles' emotions against him. For months, Styles acted out in emotion ever since he won the title, and Joe is a mastermind. He's the most intelligent opponent AJ's faced up to this point. Nakamura put a dent into Styles during their feud, but it was nothing compared to this because Samoa Joe decided to get personal. Bringing the closest thing to Styles is bound to lead to impulse decisions and mistakes. Even during this match, he provoked Styles' family who were in attendance. And Joe is already a world-class talent, but when you add all of these elements, he had the edge. He saw himself as a man that could correct Styles' life. All that needs to happen is a title change, and everything will be good. It's funny seeing these two facing off for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam. ROH, TNA, many classics together, but Joe had it scouted. AJ's strategy was for the calf crusher, of course, so the challenger followed up with the same thing. Styles was unable to build momentum with Joe being all over him. It took him a while to actually do something, and it resulted in the reverse DDT for a near fall. The match was starting to kick up a notch, and Styles was working harder. Joe was aggressive, and the knee came into play here. The fans were cheering on Styles, and he managed to hit the Styles Clash, but it wasn't enough. Joe managed to lock in the Coquina Clutch, but Styles reached the rope. Since he tried everything, Joe decided to provoke his family. He said that he could be Wendy's new daddy, and Styles lost it. He got himself disqualified, and it led to a vicious beating. Now, this was a good match. Nobody likes that kind of finish, but of course they want to prolong this feud. Joe looked very aggressive here. Styles sold well and made his offense look dangerous, and it wasn't the exact moment Joe should have won the title, especially because the feud was getting started, but it felt like it was a good sign that maybe, just maybe, he was gonna win it. Styles had zero regrets over what he did, but wasn't happy about losing the match. Samoa Joe crossed the line. The champion promised that if Joe mentions his family again, he's gonna rip his heart out. This is when he came out and locked in the Coquina Clutch. He choked them out and called for Wendy again. This feud was intense, and it of course led to another match at Hell in a Cell. Styles said that Joe has him where he wants him. It also proved that he's not man enough to take the title from him. He has to bring up his family and get personal. He called him out, but Joe didn't bother because it proved his point. Instead, he wasn't ready to stop playing daddy. And again, he called Wendy. Joe said he wanted to stop by next week, and all AJ could do was watch. By the time he went to the back, Samoa Joe was nowhere to be found. He didn't visit the house because Styles was definitely blind. It was also because he wasn't a monster. Joe was trying to keep his promise of sending AJ back to his family, and he was hoping they'd get used to it more because he's gonna take the title and make him go night-night. The WWE Champion was furious, but also used this to his advantage to ambush Joe, who assumed he wasn't there. Joe with a flurry of shots, but AJ Styles had some issues here, but far too much fury to stay down. Samoa Joe's efforts to get under Styles' skin seemed to work more than expected. He had him under his thumb, and all Styles could do was act out of emotion, which is what Joe wanted in the first place. Similar to last time, AJ was all in. He was going with the attacks without thinking properly, and that's what Joe wanted. Even then, he was unable to stop him because Styles was fuming. But again, that same fury was also going to get him in tough positions. He dominated the champion and had a strong hold in the match. It picks up, Joe starts locking in submission moves and thought he had the title. Styles had to bring in a lot more than usual to try and win it. The rack bomb, a beautiful springboard 450, still wasn't enough for the win. Joe had him down for the Coquina Clutch, but then left his shoulders down. But even then, he made him tap out, but after the 3 count. So he protested. It's not because he lost, but because he has to mention the name Wendy for 3 more weeks. That's the problem. Joe probably wasn't happy about the fact that he has to talk about Wendy for another month. He was enraged. Good match. This one had more of an unpredictable feeling, especially because the feud was heated at this point. Styles said Joe deserved to lose, and it was karma, and said that he could have his rematch at Super Showdown. No disqualification. Samoa Joe attacked him after his match with Andrade, and it backfired. A contract signing was set for the match. Joe didn't show up as he was at the Styles family house. AJ was very worried about this and even begged him to stay away. Joe wanted to use this as a message and an example to AJ. The feeling he's got at the moment will be the same one in Australia. He was still seething over getting robbed of the title, and it's one thing to deny it, but it's a whole other to steal it. That's the thing that Joe felt. He was bitter over that title match. Styles was clearly shook from this encounter and refused to go anywhere until Super Showdown. He said that this is gonna end. Styles wants to bury him alive. Alright, with that said, this one wasn't bad, but didn't make the most out of their intensity. These two hate each other, but it didn't show too much here. That is until they used weapons. Joe's knee popped and Styles was unforgiving. He punished him for his sins all under the no disqualification rule. Joe still had fight and even locked in the Coquina Clutch, but it wasn't much. He brutalized that knee with a 450 splash. There was a great reverse suplex from the Coquina Clutch. He choked him in the air. It was good. Samoa Joe was a wounded animal, but still posed as a huge threat until AJ locked in the calf crusher. That was enough for the win. Now, similar to Shinsuke, Samoa Joe does have a claim to being someone that deserved to be champion. It's just, once again, they just didn't go with it. As I said earlier, AJ Styles is so easy to book. It just has to be that. Not to mention, he was nearing a year-long title reign, so it's like, why would we end it here? But Joe definitely did deserve it. He had good matches with Styles here. They weren't going to have their TNA matches or any of their old 2000s matches, but their matches were very good. They didn't disappoint. I personally think there was a moment where Styles could have lost it here, but it is what it is. It was easy. The Miz hosted Miz TV with his guests being AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan. Both men were going to face off at Crown Jewel. Miz asked about the family and Styles was threatened. He wasn't trying to press him, but made mention of Daniel Bryan. He made fun of him and made him seem soft, but at the same time called him a boring wrestler. Both men had plenty of respect for each other. Miz was offended over this because to him it felt like they weren't treating the WWE Championship as the biggest prize in the industry. Miz's ego was challenged, but he calmed down and asked AJ Styles about how Bryan fares when it comes to his toughest opponents. Miz was trying hard to instigate, saying Styles said he's better than Bryan, and the American Dragon was glad that Styles thought that way, even though he never said it. He called him a worthy opponent, not someone like The Miz. AJ Styles is just that, a man that defended the coveted championship night in and night out. He deserves to think he's better than everyone else. He, Bryan, doesn't have the luxury of thinking like that. However, he said he knows he can beat AJ Styles. So the champion said he hasn't been facing tough opponents since he returned. He's talking about Daniel Bryan and his feuds, Big Cass, The Miz, and all that. Daniel Bryan said the title is why he fought so hard to come back, but then he went into detail about his dream. It was about the WWE Championship. Nothing was gonna keep him motivated like that except the title. And all that's standing in the way of that dream is AJ Styles. Styles was very confident, saying he won't move for anyone, and Miz was excited to see some drama. But a part of that drama wasn't fun because they targeted him. This led to him complaining about his previous match with Bryan and how he was robbed of the title shot, and Miz called AJ an irrelevant champion because he doesn't headline pay-per-views. He's southern and a joke, no wonder he's never in the main event. There was a lot of mutual respect between Bryan and AJ, but that would quickly change during their tag team match with the Usos. Same thing happened the following week, except this time AJ was the one who was pinned. Bryan made it seem like he did it intentionally. He also made reference to Bullet Club. Styles basically isn't who he seems to be, and at a moment's notice could become cold because he has a history with that. He was a leader of Bullet Club. Now at the time, Daniel Bryan didn't want to go on the trip to Saudi Arabia. A journalist was killed and WWE was criticized a lot from the media. John Cena himself turned down the appearance of the show, and Bryan's was somewhat bigger because he was in a marquee match. So they did something different. On the October 30th, 2018 episode of SmackDown, AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan hyped up their title match. Their issues seemed to be overlooked as Styles apologized. Bryan straight up told him that he sees the WWE Championship. AJ Styles was the last obstacle. The champion said he lied about the Pele kick as it was meant for Bryan, and he wasn't shocked at all. He felt like hitting AJ on purpose, and the champion decided to defend the title then and there. Shane McMahon made the match official, and it was on. Okay, WWE Championship. Very aggressive chain wrestling early on. The commentary mentioned the last time the title was defended, and that was of course the night Styles won it. Very fast stuff here. After the commercial break, AJ Styles noticed the left knee and went after it. He had issues with it after the suicide dive. AJ went to work with aggression and full focus on making that knee into a bigger problem for Daniel Bryan. This methodical approach greatly benefited AJ Styles and made Bryan the face of this match. Bryan's fierce uppercuts weren't enough to neuter AJ's offense. What did help was his intelligence. He knew AJ's offense very well, but the problem though was getting himself to consistently be on offense. AJ hit a dropkick to counter the knee. He couldn't hit the phenomenal forearm and instead managed to avoid a backdrop from the top. It was still rough, but not as rough as it was gonna be. After the commercial break, Bryan locked in the S-lock for all of 2 seconds as AJ grabbed the rope. Crazy suplex in the apron that re-injured his knee. The champion noticed this and continued going back to work. Bryan was limping and struggling, but it wasn't gonna stop him from regaining the WWE Championship. The challenger was vicious, but it was always gonna be easy for Styles to get back into it. The phenomenal forearm didn't work, and he found himself in the armbar before Bryan switched to the S-lock. A year-long title reign on the verge of concluding, but Styles wasn't going out like that. He found a way to hit the Styles Clash and quickly locked in the Calf Crusher. The challenger was looking for any way out, and coupled with his injured knee, he struggled. Bryan didn't find a way out, and he tapped. This was a great TV match. Bryan and Styles had great chemistry together, which was expected, but watching it here, it was great. And they centered the story around the knee. Bryan fought well, he had a great performance, but it was always going to be that knee that cost him. Both men shook hands, but right afterwards, Samoa Joe attacked the champion and made his mark again. Styles was fuming and wanted a match with Joe at Crown Jewel. With that said, this one was filler. Joe was never meant to challenge for the title here, so you know how it ended. The match saw Joe overwhelm Styles early on. He fought hard to get back into it, and it was their matches in a nutshell. The Coquina Clutch couldn't threaten a grandma if the WWE title was on the line, and that was no different here. It ended from out of nowhere with a phenomenal forearm. Styles was looking forward to Survivor Series. Brock Lesnar once again was the obstacle in front of AJ Styles. He was ready for the sequel. Styles was very confident, but then Paul Heyman interrupted. He talked about how Styles was almost close to being as good as Daniel Bryan. He called him the second best performer, and this seemed to greatly offend AJ Styles. He said he had respect for Bryan, but mentioned he made him tap out. Styles was ready for Brock Lesnar, but Daniel Bryan forced him to focus on him. He admitted he lost, but wanted to find a reason to punch him in the face, because he didn't like him. This was a good reason, and he threatened him. He's like, "Why are you mentioning my name? Do not talk about me." Styles clarified that Paul Heyman was the one that brought up his name and said that one of the best technical wrestlers is Daniel Bryan, so he triggered him. This was chaotic, with both men being forcefully separated by a bunch of refs and Shane McMahon. This got so intense that Shane made a WWE Championship match between them. Daniel Bryan was a vicious individual with plenty of problems and complains about how he's perceived. To him, he needs to be in the conversation with Brock Lesnar, not to mention his entire return rides on the WWE Championship. That's success, and up to this point, he had yet to get his hands on the belt. Daniel Bryan here looked much more composed and almost felt like he had this one figured out. He went after Styles' arm similarly to AJ, who went after his knee. The knee did end up being somewhat of a problem for Bryan, but not too much. The backdrop worked this time around, and the commentary mentioned this being a plan of Heyman's to weaken either of these guys. When it came down to it, AJ had to go after the knee. It almost worked because he locked in the Calf Crusher, armbar reversal into the yes lock. block. Styles escapes and goes to the phenomenal forearm. Bryan avoids it and Styles bumps into the ref, so Daniel Bryan used this to his advantage. Low blow. Styles hadn't felt one of those in a while and Bryan had a crazed look on his face. The moment he dreamt of since his return, it was all gonna be worth it. Boom. He hits the knee. 1, 2, 3. New champion. That was a good match. This was actually a good match. Like, it wasn't better than the previous one. I liked the previous one way more. But there was a lot of aggression from Daniel Bryan here. He was vicious. He was cold. He was relentless. And that heel turn was so well done. But reading up on it from that time period, some people didn't actually like it, which is shocking. The reason why some people didn't like it was because they didn't really think much of Bryan. He didn't have the best return up to this point. Not his performances. Like, a lot of his performances were good, but he wasn't as hot as he was in 2014. But that heel turn was so well done. Like, Bryan low blowing him, using the same move Nakamura used to use on Styles to win the belt. And I will say this, I kind of felt bad. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Like, watching it here, I kind of felt bad that AJ Styles had to lose the title here. Like, obviously he had the long run and all that, but I kind of felt bad he had to lose the title here. But it had to happen, you know? Like, at the end of the day, he had a long run, and they were probably scared that Brock was going to face him again, not to mention he's going to lose to him again. So if you put that out of the way, say Roman Reigns was champion, I think Styles would have walked into Survivor Series as WWE champion. Do I think Bryan would have turned heel? Yeah, I think Bryan would have won the title anyways from him. They weren't going to run the same match and have him lose, which, again, I think if AJ Styles was going to face Brock Lesnar in Survivor Series again, he has to win. But this was in the, if you're not Roman Reigns, if you're not Seth Rollins, you cannot beat Brock Lesnar. That's what it was back then. And it was just annoying because it didn't leave a lot to be desired. Other than that, this was a great match. And yeah, I kind of felt a bit bad that AJ had to lose the title here. I'm not gonna lie. I already know the result here, but watching it through the entire run, kind of felt like, damn, he had to end it here. All right, with that, so let's talk about the title reign. Styles did well with the title, but there was some problems. For one, he wasn't in the main event as often. Even on SmackDown, he wasn't on the main event. However, he put in performances, he was a pure workhorse and the best wrestler in WWE at the time. What I don't like about this title reign is the fact that they gave him 2 challengers and dragged their feuds. Shinsuke Nakamura and Samoa Joe. If you mentioned this in 2017, people would be proud to be like, oh, this is the best title reign of the decade. Oh, nope. Some of those matches weren't as good as they should have been, especially Shinsuke Nakamura's. On the other side, they didn't give him much strong opponents. Like, take away Shinsuke and Samoa Joe, he didn't feud with anyone notable, barring those two. You did have Bryan near the end, which was good. I think Kevin Owens as a standalone and Sami Zayn as a standalone could have been short rivalries for AJ Styles. They don't need to pair them together and do the handicap match thing. It was nonsense. Other than that, Styles worked very hard here, you know? I thought the reign did get stale near the end, but that's mostly because of the fact that his matches didn't go all out. If they had those matches he had in 2016 here, no one would be complaining. But that just goes to show you, like, people will always have a problem with long title reigns. 371 days. That's one of the longest reigning WWE Championship reigns ever, which shows you just how much WWE invested in AJ Styles. It's ridiculous. I actually think it's insane that he got to hold the title that long. My favorite match here is actually a John Cena match from SmackDown in February 2018. I thought that match was great. So yeah. Alright, what do you guys think of AJ Styles' title reign? Please comment down below. That's it for this video. Make sure you hit the Styles collection like button, perhaps a phenomenal forearm, and the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.